big things done on the issues of importance to everyday Americans, creating more than 12 million jobs in President Biden's first 2 years in office, reducing the deficit by $1.7 trillion, lowering costs, supercharging the economy when it was on the brink of a deep recession, and moving in the right direction. As President Biden eloquently, strongly, thoughtfully articulated in the face of very disrespectful, unbecoming behavior on the other side of the aisle, that we've done a lot, but there's still work to be done to lower costs, to fight for better paying jobs in every single community, and of course to lean in on public safety. And we look forward to partnering with President Biden in the work ahead, implementing the tremendous pieces of legislation that were passed into law, while at the same time defending Social Security, defending Medicare, defending democracy, defending a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions, and pushing back against the extreme MAGA Republican agenda, which is totally out of control. Questions?
We saw almost all Republicans stand up and agree with Biden that Social Security and Medicare off the table. Do you believe that? Do you think that they have taken that off the table, actually?
That remains to be seen. We have said that the United States has a responsibility to pay the debts that have already been incurred, that Congress has already signed off on, in order for us to continue to be able to elevate the health, the safety, the economic well-being of the American people. So we have to meet our obligations. And it's not clear to me that the extreme MAGA Republicans are prepared to do that. And so what we have continuously said to our Republican colleagues is simply put your cards on the table. Show us your plan. Do you want to cut Social Security or not? Do you want to cut Medicare or not? Do you want to cut veterans' benefits or not? What is your plan? And once you put your plan on the table, the American people can evaluate it, Congress can evaluate it, House Democrats can evaluate it, and we can figure out how to end this effort to shake down the American people in connection with the debt ceiling.
Yeah, you've got Medicare and Social Security off the table. Is there any particular reason that I haven't
Not clear to me that it's off the table right
for
now.
Democrats, it's off the table, correct?
We are going to defend Social Security and Medicare. No cuts.
Why isn't Medicaid in that category?
Well, first of all, I think what we've said is everything that impacts the health, the safety, and the economic well-being of the American people is in the category of being off the table in the context of paying bills that the Congress has already incurred, which means meeting our obligation to protect the full faith and credit of the United States of America in the context of the debt ceiling. At the same time, what we have said is that there's a budget process and there's an appropriations process. And we are willing to have a conversation with the other side of the aisle about how to invest in making life better for everyday Americans, how to invest in the middle class, how to invest in all those Americans who aspire to be part of the middle class. But in order to have that conversation, that discussion, the extreme MAGA Republicans have to put their cards on the table. Show us your plan. Otherwise, there can be no reasonable discussion.
Mr. Lee, thank you. Have you spoken with, or will you speak to Speaker McCarthy about some of the conduct of his members, taking on his president, calling him a liar and things? He is responsible. He didn't gavel anybody down during the speech the other night. Should he have been more aggressive in trying to preside over the House of Representatives?
I have not had that conversation with Speaker McCarthy, but as far as I'm concerned, the behavior of the extreme MAGA Republicans speaks for itself. And I'm confident that the overwhelming majority of the American people found that aggressive, childish, petulant behavior by the extreme MAGA Republicans who were yelling and screaming on the floor of the House during President Biden's State of the Union address to be distasteful.
Should he, though, have intervened to some degree? This is a state of
Thanks.
the Union
Next question.
On the subject of Congresswoman Omar, last week before the vote to remove her from the Foreign Affairs Committee, she said that, quote, "My leadership and voice will not be diminished if I'm not on this committee for one term." That to me seems to suggest that perhaps you might have had a conversation with her about reappointing her to Foreign Affairs in the future. Has that happened? Are you willing to make that commitment?
Well, we have made clear that it was wrong to remove Representative Ilhan Omar in a partisan way from her committee assignment to Foreign Affairs. She is currently on the Budget Committee, and that was a unanimous decision that was made by the House Democratic Caucus to place her on the Budget Committee where she can defend American values, defend Social Security, defend Medicare, defend Medicaid, defend the things that elevate the health, safety, and economic well-being of the American people, and push back against right-wing extremism. If Ilhan Omar expresses interest in the future in being restored to the Foreign Affairs Committee, that is certainly something that I will support.
Mr. Leader, there was a pretty robust debate in a committee hearing a few weeks ago about an amendment allowing weapons into committee hearings that Republicans removed. It actually doesn't really have any effect because the House rules supersede that says that weapons cannot be brought anywhere on the Capitol complex, including onto the floor of the House. But there's no screening mechanism in place to prevent that from happening. Are you concerned that there could be members of Congress that are carrying weapons throughout the Capitol complex, even down to the House floor, especially since the mags have been taken down outside the House chamber?
Yeah, I don't have an opinion on this issue one way or the other. I haven't looked closely into it, but here's what I will say generally about the first few weeks of this extreme MAGA Republican majority. They are focused on issues that have nothing to do with making life better for everyday Americans. And every single week, there's another example of Republicans not focused on dealing with inflationary pressures, not focused on jobs, not focused on the economy, not focused on the health and well-being of the American people, not focused on public safety, not focused on lowering costs. So today, the so-called Committee on Weaponization, which is really just an extreme MAGA Republican subcommittee to obstruct justice, is again going to convene focused on peddling conspiracy theories and catering to the far right-wing fringe of America. This is not a Republican majority in the House of Representatives that is engaged in doing anything to make life better for everyday Americans. They'd rather go investigate President Biden's family and laptops than address the issues of concern that affect the middle class, those who aspire to be part of the middle class, and everyday Americans. And it's shameful, and I don't expect it to change. Second row.
Sir, Speaker Pelosi, or former Speaker Pelosi, recently said that she didn't...
Speaker Emerita.
Speaker Emerita Pelosi recently said that she didn't want to be a mother-in-law for the caucus, a mother-in-law in the kitchen. How's it been for the caucus with her in this new role?
It's been wonderful for me to be able to consistently talk to Speaker Pelosi, lean on her for her advice, her thoughts, her guidance, her suggestions, her experience as the greatest speaker of all time in the United States of America. The factual and historic record, in my view, makes that indisputable. It's wonderful to have Speaker Pelosi around and available for myself and Pete and Catherine and others to rely upon for her advice and guidance. Kevin?
There's a resolution being introduced today by some freshmen and younger members of the caucus to expel George Santos. Have you been read in on that, and do you support moving forward with that?
I haven't had the opportunity to look at the precise language connected to the resolution. I can only imagine what it says, and it certainly speaks for itself. George Santos is a complete and utter and total fraud. And that fraud was perpetrated on the American people with aid and comfort from the extreme MAGA Republican establishment. And they are still coddling him here in the United States Congress. Third row.
You mentioned last week that you didn't want to get ahead of the CDC before their meeting with the president and vice president on police reform. Now that they've had the meeting, now that President Biden gave his State of the Union, have you spoken with Chairman Horsford on a path forward on police reform in the House?
President Biden spoke in an extraordinarily personal, authentic, and compelling way during the State of the Union about the need to strengthen the relationship between the police and the community, lean into public safety in a fact-based and sensible way, and also ensure that there's accountability when things go wrong. I think President Biden struck exactly the right tone, and it laid a foundation for there hopefully to be meaningful bipartisan conversations between the House and the Senate moving forward with respect to the issue of police reform. Dia?
So the House panel on weaponization, they're having their first hearing today. Ranking Member Plaskett is a former Brooklyn prosecutor. You both served on as impeachment managers. Curious if you had any advice for her, what you guys talked about. Can you preview anything, what we'll expect today?
Well, the members on the Democratic side of the aisle who serve on the Weaponization Committee are experienced in dealing with oversight, accountability, and our congressional duties in a reasonable, rational, and responsible fashion, and are going to be ready to push back against the extremism that we are going to see from the Weaponization Committee. The American people do not support this Weaponization Committee, but it's Exhibit A of the extreme MAGA Republican agenda, which is not designed to do anything to make a difference in the lives of the American people. This is why President Biden's remarks during the State of the Union were so powerful and compelling, because he spoke about job creation. He spoke about the economy. He spoke about achieving the American dream. He spoke about helping everyday Americans to lower costs against aggressive corporate overreach that takes place in the day-to-day lives of everyday Americans. These are the issues that we're going to continue to focus on. The Weaponization Committee is another unnecessary distraction, and it's a waste of time and the treasure of the American people.
Did you have any specific advice for her?
Be yourself.
All right.
The last time a member was expelled, Jim Trafficant, more than 20 years ago, there was an FBI DOJ investigation, there was a criminal trial in federal court, then the House Ethics Committee took up the case and reviewed it, recommended to expel him. Do you think just rushing to expel Santos, for as much of a fraud as he obviously is, but without any of those type of steps being completed, would set a really weird precedent?
Yeah, I haven't taken a position on the resolution, and I haven't read the resolution. Thanks. You good?
There was a briefing on the Chinese spy flight this morning for House members, and some House Republicans are accusing President Biden of not spending enough time on China during his State of the Union speech. I was wondering, do you think the president should have addressed the issue more on Tuesday?
I think the president has been incredibly strong as it relates to the strategic competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party. President Biden took decisive action that both resulted in making sure that that surveillance balloon was downed, but was taken down in a way that didn't jeopardize the safety and well-being of the American people, and also allowed for the United States to recover the remains of the surveillance balloon in a manner that will yield significant intelligence benefits for our country.
Last week, in the effort to get the votes to kick on Omar of Foreign Affairs, McCarthy had promised his members there would be a review on code of conduct and a process by which future decisions like this are made. He said he had a conversation with you about that. Are you willing to have Democrats participate in this process? And if so, have you named any yet who will be working with his members on developing this code of conduct process?
We had an initial conversation on this issue. It was a positive conversation, but I think the position that I've consistently taken with respect to any efforts in this 118th Congress has been, let's see the type of members that will be involved on the Republican side in any efforts to achieve a bipartisan result. That was the case with the Select Committee on the Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party. And upon seeing the members that were appointed by Speaker McCarthy to that Select Committee, largely serious members on the other side of the aisle, doesn't mean we're not going to strongly disagree with them in many areas, but we'll work to seriously tackle this issue in a bipartisan way. If there are serious members who are appointed on the Republican side with respect to trying to find a path forward with respect to committee assignments, then we're willing to engage in that in a serious way. But I've got to see who is going to be leading the effort on the other side of the aisle.
Last question.
Go to the back. Thanks.
During the State of the Union, President Biden mentioned two things on COVID fraud. One was tripling the anti-fraud strike group, and the other was extending the statute of limitations. Given that it was revealed yesterday that $191 billion has been misused, and that number continues to go up just about every month, is this something that can actually get done in this Congress?
I certainly hope so. I mean, I think we all support the notion that taxpayer dollars and resources should be used in an effective, efficient, and equitable fashion. And that there's got to be accountability at the back end for any misuse of taxpayer dollars in any area, and that there's got to be guardrails put in on the front end. And hopefully we'll be able to find some common ground with the other side of the aisle on this issue. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.